Well, hello, welcome to the channel. My name is Johnny, and you're watching Hillbilly Modeling. And this is going to be part one of our build of this kit right here. This is the Trumpeter Russian SAM-6 anti-aircraft missile vehicle, and it is in 1/35th scale. So if you haven't seen the inbox kit review, give that a little look, and we're going to begin building it. So we got a couple of things to take care of first. Some things that I think are really important before we really get involved into into the actual build. So let's jump down onto the bench here and take a look at that, okay? Okay, so first thing we're going to do is take a look at our instructions here, and you should familiarize yourself with your instructions, and just so that you know how everything needs to go together. So step one is all road wheel arms and road wheels and stuff like that. And then we got our tracks in step two, step three, some little parts on the back of the vehicle. Step four is when you start building up the upper hull. And what we're really looking for here is any parts that would preclude us from actually joining the upper and lower hull together before it says to do that in the instructions. So, and the reason why you want to do this is maybe you might need to clamp it or do some filling and sanding and what have you, and you don't want to have all that little stuff. And as you can see here, this step 11 is where you're actually going to join it together according to the instructions. But we would like to do that ahead of time, and that way we don't have to worry about breaking off all that little stuff. So that's one of our primary concerns. Also, we do have some items that we need to check the fit on. And let's flip back here. We do have a ring here that we need to cement to the top of the upper hull. And that ring holds this center section here, the turntable for the actual missiles. So we'll just go ahead and fit all that so that we don't have any issues later on. And usually these parts do fit kind of tight together, so you're going to need to do just a little bit of modification. So we'll go ahead and collect all the parts that we're going to be using for this pre-build steps here. So yeah, we're going to need that bottom section there of our, I'm calling it the turntable for the missile erector / launcher. Okay, so, and then we're going to need the ring that it mounts to. And as you can see here, I do cut my sprue gates long on the parts. And that allows me to get in real close without the sprues being in the way, and we can just trim them off really flush. And it really cuts down on your cleanup and sanding and all that. So that's just the way I like to do it. You don't have to do it this way, but it works well. For me, anyway. And we are going to have to clean out the inside of this ring. Just a couple of, well, actually it's 4 little pieces from the molding process. And so I'm going to take and check and see if it's actually going to slide over. I don't think it's going to, so, oh, that's really, really tight. So, all right, we're just going to have to clean everything up. But we already knew that we was going to have to do that. So let's start with our lower hull here. Now we have these stiffener ribs here across the front of the vehicle, and as you can see, they hold the forward armor plate up, and it doesn't allow us to seal that seam. So we're just going to go ahead and flat sand that, making sure that we stay with the angle, because this we don't want to put a bevel on this, because then that'll leave a gap, and then we'll have to try to fill that. So once we get that sanded down, and it doesn't take but a second to do, as you can see, we can go ahead and do our test fit again. And it appears to be okay, more or less. Yep, it'll be fine. Shouldn't be an issue there, so that looks good. So next up, we do need to look at these corners here. And because of the multi-piece mold that the Trumpeter uses to do this upper hull, there are some areas here on the corners, especially the rear corners of the upper hull, that need some attention. And Trumpeter, through their molding process, it's not unusual to find that their kits need a little cleanup where those mold seams come together. So you can either sand or scrape or a combination of both. And as you can see, I'm doing actually both. But we are going to clean these up. And don't forget about the one on the opposite side. Now we're also going to go ahead and straighten up these edges on our turntable. And it seems that Trumpeter is kind of still using the old way of molding things with the slight taper on those edges to help them pop out of the molds. A lot of the manufacturers now don't do that as much, except for Italeri. Italeri is really bad for doing that. And having a little bit of a taper on it, I understand it makes it easier for the part sprues to come out of the molds, but it gives the modeler a whole lot of areas that just need to be, cleaned and straightened and sanded, and that's kind of irritating sometimes. I mean, I don't mind it as much as some other people do. Yeah, I mean, if you're just looking forward to a straightforward build, it's kind of looking like this kit is not it. So anyway, we have the ring and the turntable here, all set to go. Also, we're going to have to clean up where we're going to have to insert the ring onto the upper hull. There apparently was a spider there from the molding process that Trumpeter had cut out before packaging the kit. It's kind of unusual that they do that, I guess, but I guess they decided they wanted to keep that little piece of plastic, so they've already cut it out for us, so we just need to clean that up. Now there's no reason to not go ahead and mount this, since we've already got it fit into place and it's sitting appropriately. Now there is a little bit of movement in it, so we're just going to have to kind of watch that and get it as center as we can. So let's just go ahead and cement this up. And I'm just going to be using the To Me Extra Thin. We'll be using that through probably this part of the build. So we're just going to put some cement in here around on the inside, but I think also running it around just on the outside there give us a little bit more of a solid mounting for it. And one last time, just because I want to check and make sure that everything looks good. And it does. So we're in good shape here. All right, so let us go back and pull out our instructions again and start. Now we're going to actually start building. So this is part one. Now we do have this back plate to put on our lower hull. And I think maybe we should go ahead and do that before we put on all the road wheels and stuff. We'll do that, and probably also the final drive covers. I think those probably need to go on first before we get into all the road wheel arms and road wheels and those little attachment items there. So let's work on that. So here's that back plate, and as I try to fit it, it does not want to go in. So, big surprise. Come on, Trumpeter, you're letting us down. So, if we take a real close look at it, we can see where the multi-piece mold was slightly offset. And, yeah. So, we got a little step right there. And that's kind of holding us out from allowing that back plate to sit down. Now, you could notch that back plate and try to fit it around that, but then that's going to leave us a gap. So let's just go ahead and file this down. And so we'll have a nice straight, flat area there to get this plate in place. Plate in place. So, and as long as it fits and sits down, we're in good shape here. That looks pretty good. So now all we need to do is go ahead and cement that. And this is a good example why I like doing these large pieces first before we start putting all those little toe attachments and all that stuff on, because if you run into these fit issues, that's going to be a problem. So we do have our final drive covers. Now I did just write the number in on it there, so that because they are different left and right, so I just don't want to get them mixed up. But truth of the matter is, you can't really get them mixed up because they're only going to fit one way. And here again with that plate, we are having a little bit of an issue. It protrudes out from the side of the lower hull there. So we need to smooth that out because these final drive covers have to set nice and flush. So with that done, we will go ahead and put our final drive covers in place. And it is a really, really tight fit. And they just kind of snap on, well, and fall off. So let's try that again. If we get it to snap into place, and as you can see, I'm using a lot of pressure here. There we go. I think, yeah. All right. So we don't want any gap there. It needs to set nice and firm and flat. And we'll just cement that into place. And then, of course, we have the one for the opposite side as well. And it fits just as tight as the opposite side did. Next up, we have these little blocks to put in. And they do require some cleaning up. And we'll just cement those in. Now, on these blocks is our towing attachments here. And that is the Russian style with the kind of like a T-handle attachment there. And they're nice and snug, so we just need to press them into place, and they will hold themselves right where they need to go. And then we'll just hit that up, a little bit of cement to secure them. And that'll hold them just fine. So, next up, we're going to take a look at our drive sprockets. We need to assemble them, and they don't really want to go together. So, as I mentioned before, there is a slight taper on this surface, so we're just going to kind of straighten that up with our hobby knife to give us a kind of a perpendicular edge there to slide over that center hub. And this is a keyed part, so you're going to want to line that key up, and as you can see, we can press it right together and make sure we line our key up. Now, the reason why that key is there is to make sure that the sprockets are aligned left and right. So you're going to want to look at that and check and make sure that those teeth are not offset. If so, then our track's not going to fit. So next up, we do have our bump stops. And there are 3 per side. And it's just a little spring affair there. And it is a kind of a peg and slot kind of thing going on. So just a little bit of cement onto the surface where we're going to mount it, and then we just slide it into place. And these are rather small, and I'm not using tweezers because if I was to use tweezers on a little bitty round part like this, it would be lost, and they don't give us any spares. So, all right, so we have our road wheel arms here, and I have them separated into the 3 different types. Not that you can actually get them kind of mixed up because of the way that they actually go on, but what we have is we have a square peg, and then we have on the road wheel arms where these large plates are, there are kind of a link there that's going to slide over a little pin. Now that would be the hydraulic shock absorber attachment. And so we have 3 of these road wheel arms, and these are specific to this side of the vehicle. And then for the center road wheel arms, and there's 3 per side there, those, well, kind of middle ones. These are the ones without the bump stop and without the shock absorber. They just have that square hole that goes over the square peg. And we'll just put those into place. And the 3 on the left and 3 on the right are exactly the same, so we don't have to worry about that. So that's item number 5. And as you can see, it has just a little bit of movement in there, so we're going to have a little bit of an alignment issue, so we're going to want to make sure that we get that right. So the first thing to do is to put a little bit of cement on these to hold them into place. And we want to make sure that they're all pressed fully into place after we get our cement on them. And with that done, you can look down and you can see that they can be a little bit staggered, and we don't want that. We want them all lined up. So out comes the straight rule. At least I think mine's straight. So we'll use this to line up those little axles that come off of each one of the arms. That way, all of our road wheels will be lined up with one another once we install them. And we want to make sure that they are firmly set and they are all perfectly aligned. And we don't want to be messing with them until they fully set up. And of course, we've got the opposite side to do. So the parts that go onto the front of the hull, we're going to leave those off for now, even though that is in step 1. We're going to leave those off because we don't want to have that interfere just in case we need to use a little bit of putty or something there on that lower seam. And we can start putting our idler in place and start putting on our road wheels. So all these road wheels are exactly the same. And then we do run into a small issue here. On the road wheel arms that do not have the shock attachment on them, the axles appear to be just a little bit larger than the hole that they're supposed to go into. So I tried, all the road wheels more or less, and it'll kind of start, but it's not going to go up on there. And that's going to be an issue because if we press these home, as a friction fit, we're not going to be able to pull them back off. And that would cause a problem. Might even cause us to break one of our road wheel arms off, and we don't want to do that. And we got the same problem on the opposite side. And I don't want to modify the road wheels because if we get those kind of mixed up in our painting process and everything, then we're going to have an issue. So we need to go and either scrape down or sand all these little axles. And it's important to note that I let this set overnight with the road wheel arms to dry and came back the next day to work on this because we didn't want to mess up the alignment. So with all of those done, we're going to leave those little attachments off the front. We can go ahead and start looking at our track. So we got our drive sprocket on and our idler on and all of our road wheels now. And looking at the track, this is the length and link style tracks. So I'm going to need a straight edge. And this is a nice thick ruler. And you can use anything that's straight, but I'm just going to use this supplementary cutting mat and tape my ruler down to it. That way I can slide it out of the way and then bring it back whenever I need it. Now, one of the things that I found in this kit is that these tracks don't, the long sections, if it has 3 or 5 or 6 sections or more, they really don't want to go together. I mean, you can force them, but they'll kind of pop apart. So we actually need to fit just the long sections. And it's important to note also that we don't have this problem with the single links, which we'll be using later on. So yeah, that's kind of the fit we want. We want to make sure that these links can make, these track shoes can make contact with one another because we're going to be cementing them into place. So next up is going to be orientation. So before we start gluing our track together, we need to figure out how these tracks are supposed to look. So going to the painting and marking guide here, as you can see from the front of the vehicle, it's supposed to have like, see how it kind of bevels up in the middle there, giving us kind of that semi-arc look. So that's what we want towards the front of the vehicle, is that arc look. And that'll keep us straight. So that's really important when it comes to putting these tracks together because of the way the segments are laid out. So we want to get everything oriented correctly. And we'll go back and we'll use the assembly guide for our tracks. So right where my finger is, that's the front of the vehicle for this run of tracks. So what we're going to do is, with our drive sprocket, we got the long piece, a short piece, which will start our angle up towards the drive sprocket, and then it says 12 links to go around the drive sprocket. Well, we're only going to use half those. We're going to use 6. And then for the forward edge, we got 2 singles, and then a straight piece of 3, and then you're supposed to use another 12, but we're only going to use 6 on the front as well. So we're splitting those 12 counts in half for either end of our run here for our track. So with our ruler, we can start sliding all of these together, and it kind of helps. Now, since these parts are so small and so light, you're gonna have to use something to hold them down. If you use your finger, they will stick to your finger and you will fumble around with it. So I'm using just a pair of tweezers, and of course I'm having issues here. But these small parts are kind of slippery and they will get away from you. So we're going to slide all these together and get that bottom run. And you can use your straight edge to lay it down and kind of push everything together. And we'll do this again after we put our cement on our tracks because we want to make sure that it's nice and tight before we start our bending operation. Now, as you can see here, I did tape the long center section of those tracks down so that I'm not chasing this all over the mat here. And so we're just going to glue up these. And so you got the, towards the front of the vehicle, we have 6 singles. Then we have that small length of shoes, which is, I think it's 3 shoes. And then we got 2 more, which helps us with that bend up from the ground towards that return idler. And we'll go ahead and put our cement on that. Now you can be generous with this cement. We want it to penetrate down and kind of, well, cement everything together, right? So once again, we'll come back in with our straight edge, and we want to hold them down flat, and then we're going to use our tweezers just to scoot everything together. Kind of squinch it all up there so that we don't have any spaces and that all of our track shoes have good contact with one another, and that'll give us the best opportunity for success. So once we get that taken care of, we're going to let this unit set here for about 5 minutes. Now 5, 6 minutes, 7 minutes is fine. Don't go too much longer than that. So the To Me Extra Thin is going to set up for us, and now we can just slide our track section away, and we can get our jig out of the way, set that aside, and just take and place the vehicle on that long flat center section, making sure that we're in between the guide horns there. And our drive sprocket is going to give us an anchor point for this section of track. So we're going to go ahead and, since our drive sprocket is not cemented to the vehicle, we can kind of move it a little bit and kind of get those drive sprocket teeth aligned with the little slots that's in our track. And then we can, once we get that kind of set, we can go ahead and wrap the section of track around. Now, we didn't allow this cement to set up fully. And the whole ideal here is that it's going to remain flexible enough for us that we can get the shape that we need out of our Lincoln length tracks. So with the rear section done, we'll come up to the front of the vehicle, and we're going to do the same thing. Now, I know my fingers are in the way. Sorry about that. But we do need to get it pushed up underneath that sponson and then pull it right up into place. And as you can see, it will just bend right around. Now, we do want to make sure that it keeps its shape. Don't have to worry about the drive sprocket end because it's kind of a friction fit back there with the drive sprocket. So we're in good shape there. But on this forward section, we will go ahead and put some masking tape in place. And at first, I do try to wrap it around our return idler there, but since it's not cemented, it will actually roll, and it's not keeping the shape like I want it to. So we're just going to use another piece of tape there and tape it all the way over the first road wheel there. There we go. And that's going to set the shape of our tracks. So it's not hard. It's just a little bit time consuming, as you can see. And you do need to take your time with this. Do not rush this process. Now, I've gone ahead and did a mock-up of our upper track section because I'm not confident that the instructions have us using the right number of single lengths of single shoes there. So we're going to kind of slip this into place, more or less where it goes. We're not installing it. Just kind of lining it up. And as you can see, if we use the number of shoes, and remember those for the front and the rear, we split that sections of 12 in half. So we got 6 on the bottom, and I put 6 on the ends of the top run too. But we're going to have to remove one. Otherwise, we're just going to have way too much track up there. So we're going to take that one off. And don't lose it. May need it later. So next, let's go ahead and check it again. And you know I am a fan of test fitting. And with this kit, it appears that that is a good philosophy to have. So we're going to go ahead and set this into place. And I'm just looking to make sure that, yeah, it's going to be pretty much what we want it to be. And there's going to be enough slack in this. It's not going to be a problem. We'll be able to get our slack, our sag, track sag out of this. And as you can see, that's going to work out just fine. Yeah, that's what we're looking for. That's going to be a good look for it. So all we need to do now is pull this back out and grab our jig and set this track up and get it ready for installation. Now, one of the things that I did do is, if you see right here in this picture, there are 3 black dots. And that's because I did not fill those ejector pin marks. And I just used a sharp magic marker and marked those 3 ejector pin marks, which can be seen, rather than fill the 60-odd ejector pin marks, and most of which you're not going to see anyway. So there's 3 of those on either side. So I'll have to take care of that after we get the tracks back off. Okay, so back with our jig, and we're going to have to take the masking tape where we did our mock-up. We have to take that off because we don't want that in our way. And there's a couple of reasons for it. One, if you try to glue everything up with masking tape on it, and you try to install it, the tape kind of actually gets in the way. It either makes it too tight and it wants to spring out, or it makes it too loose and it'll open up the gaps in your shoe. So, and you don't want that. So we'll just remove that. We're going to use the same process of losing and flipping our parts around here. We do want to make sure that we're still going in the same direction. So orientation is important. And we'll just go ahead and glue this up the same way we did the other tracks when we did the lower section. And making sure that we have full contact between those edges there, the connecting edges between those single shoes and then the length sections as well. Just want to make sure that everything's touching one another so that the to me extra thin can penetrate and grab hold of those. This time, however, we're going to do it just a little bit different. I'm going to let this set up at least 10 minutes before I go to actually fit it to the vehicle. I still need it to be flexible, but I don't need it to be as flexible. And we definitely don't want any separation in these links. So we'll just glue this up, and then we'll make sure that everything is nice and tight, and we'll just let it set for 10 minutes. Now with our tracks partially dry, we can set that off to the side, move our jig out of the way, and I'm just going to give it a little tweak. As you can see, it's still pliable, and that's good for us. And we need to move that one track shoe, change that angle towards our drive sprocket just a bit. And now we can come in. We need to remove that tape that we put on for our lower track section there. So we'll get that up and out of the way. We don't want to take it completely off. We're going to reuse that to secure the track into place. And then we simply insert our track. If I can get it underneath that tape, it keeps wanting to stick to it. We'll push that back down. Going to align those shoes and get our tape stuck right on top of that. We don't want any gaps here. And as you can see, that tape should hold it right where it needs to go. And we're just going to re-emphasize that little bit of sag there as it comes off the idler. And now we need to press this shoe down into place over top of our drive sprocket. And that drive sprocket will hold it right where it's supposed to go. There we go. And that looks nice. So it's important to go ahead and tell you that I'm going to talk a little bit about painting. It's been my experience that once we get everything painted up, our tracks don't necessarily fit. So sometimes we have a gap. So I am using sponge right here. I'll just go ahead and mention that to kind of hold everything down into place. And we'll insert some sponge here and there to keep the track sag right the way we want it to look. So going back to the painting, paint has thickness. And it may change our dimensions here on our top run of our track. So when we go to paint our tracks, we're going to paint up a couple of extra track links, one for the right and one for the left, just in case there is a little bit of space there that we can't compensate for. With our track sag, we could probably compensate for, say, half of the of a shoe length. But if it's more than that, you're just going to have to put an extra link in. So we will make sure that we have a couple extra ones painted up, ready to go, just in case we run into that problem. Now for the opposite side, it's the same process. Just make sure that you wait long enough for the glue to set up. And like I say, I set my timer at 10 minutes. And yeah, that gives us just enough flexibility there that we're not really causing a kink in the tracks, but it's got a nice sag to it. And these little bitty pieces of sponge, now this is synthetic sponge, but it's not only good for chipping effects, but it's also good for assembly here, as you can see. And that'll just hold everything in place. And we're going to set this aside and let it dry overnight. We don't want to be fooling with this and possibly breaking or distorting the track out of shape because this is the shape that we want it to keep for as long as it will anyway. Okay, so that's going to take care of part one. Now, one of the things that I did do is I went ahead and took and just temporarily put the upper hull on there. What I'm really looking at is right here. I want to make sure that there's enough room that we'll be able to remove these tracks for painting. You know, so that's kind of important, and I don't think it's going to be that big of an issue. So we should be able to slide those out the way we've made these tracks up into two pieces. So we'll be able to do that. Now the other thing, just a reminder that because of the way these vehicles are made and they use torsion bar suspension, the road wheel arms are not diagonally aligned from one another, left to right. So in other words, one side's going to be slightly further ahead on the vehicle than the other side, which means since we fitted these tracks to these specific sides, when we remove them, we need to make sure that we don't mix them up because they're not going to fit right if we put them on the wrong side. So something to keep in mind there. So that will do it. Special thanks to all my subscribers. It's because of you guys that I keep making these videos, and I hope that you enjoyed this one. And if you are new to the channel and you're not a subscriber, I hope today I earned your subscription. So stay tuned for part two, and we will continue our build. And leave me a message in the comments if you have built this kit. I'd like to hear from you and see what your take is on the build, and if you had any real issues, it'd be nice to know before I get there. So you guys stay safe, and I will see you in the next one.